All right, everybody. In the last video we left off, we were talking about Johnson's popularity. We said that it dropped from 48 to 36%, and American people were starting to get very upset with this war. They were very unhappy, and we have a lot of things happening between the civil rights movement and this war. And Johnson cannot fund both of them. And as you see here, this iconic picture of Johnson in his Great Society, it's showing that it's not working. And so we're going to have a large anti war movement, which is heavily influenced by the civil rights movement. People in the civil rights movement are saying, hey, we want equality, we want things to be right. And many people are like, why should we go over there and fight a foreign war or try to contain communism when things are not right here at home? And so a lot of Americans are going to jump on this anti war movement. And much of that movement is going to be on the college based level. A lot of university professors are going to have what they call teach ins. And these teach ins are pretty much we're not going to have class. We are basically going to sit in class, talk about the war, how negative it is, what your opposition is to it. And it's going to lead into a lot of people during this counterculture, this hippie movement being very anti war. And the counterculture was very different. Longer hair, didn't shave, many things like that. Listen to different type of music. They borrowed a lot of ideas that the beatnik generation pretty much had started, and by the 60s, late 60s anyways, they are going against the grain. They're kind of like the rebels, and they have a cause, and that cause is to buck up against the current government. They hate Johnson, and they are doing things like burning their draft cards. And we have a lot of musicians coming out, like CCR with Fortunate Son, and they're saying, look, some of us aren't lucky. Why are you sending us out there to go fight this war that we have no connection with? And you are pretty much sending the young guys out there to go fight in this war, die for this war, while the older guys sit back and enjoy the spoils. So, what these guys will do, they'll just be like, screw this. Burning my draft card. I'm not going. We're going to have a lot of draft dodgers. A lot of people will flee the country, go and hide in different places like that. And they will just say, I'm not doing this. Even Muhammad Ali pretty much said, I'm not going to war. I'm refusing this. He had to advocate his title. And one of the things that he was known for saying was, ain't no Vietnamese person ever called me the N word. And he had a rightful reason. As you can see in this figure right here, we're seeing the amount of African American combatants rising and dying. And we can kind of see the African American population only being at 10%. And this was showing that a lot of African Americans were being drafted in this war, dying for a cause in which they did not really truly understand or believe, while they didn't have the rights here at home. And so they were like, why should I go fight for you when you can't give us the rights here at home? And they had a legitimate claim in that. If African Americans are only making up around 10% of the population, then why in the world are the death rates much higher at 20%? And then it does get eventually lower, but still, come on. It's simple math. They were drafting them at higher rates percentage wise. And we'll see this pressure will work. Eventually, these draft dodgers, these guys that are saying, look, I'm in school. I should not have to go to war. I've been given a good life. Go find someone who's a minority, whatever the case may be. It does start to dwindle, but still, we are going to see a much larger rate of poor Americans and African Americans and other minorities being killed based off of the percentage line here in America than what should actually be killed in the war. And also, a final point to note is that African Americans and other minorities, by the way, had a hard time advancing up in the military. And as you advance up in the military, your odds of actually being killed and dying go down. A lot of the times, these African Americans and other minorities are going to be in the lower ranks. They're going to be the boots on the ground. They're going to be the ones actually fighting. And that is another reason why their death rates are much higher than the total population. And we're going to have leaders like Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, and then the big one, Dr. King, is going to say, this is not right. It should not be happening. And that was one key reason that things started to change, but not like they fully should have. It wasn't until my lifetime that we actually had a 4-star general as a black man, Colin Powell. And I think that's a good thing because the American military needs to realize, hey, I don't care what color skin you are, what ethnicity you are, whatever. Put the best men in charge. They are in charge of saving so many lives, trying to keep people alive, and trying to win wars. And that's the main objective. All right, by 1968, we're going to see that the polls are pretty much split down the middle. We're going to have two groups of people. First group is the Dubs. The Dubs pretty much want to get out of Vietnam. They, just like in the War of 1812, where this term kind of first showed up in American history, did not believe war was the right way to go. They believed that, hey, we should have peace. And remember, a dove is a symbol of peace. On the other hand, a hawk goes out there and it kills its prey. And these people believe that they should stay in Vietnam, go ahead and win the war, not bring any type of dishonor to America by losing any type of war or just kind of gracefully getting out of it. The Dubs got a huge push with the Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive was pretty much an attack everywhere you see one of these red dots up here. Westmoreland, McNair are on TV saying this war is nearly done. And then out of nowhere, the Viet Cong had pretty much regrouped, recentered, and pretty much attacked in these major populated areas. And this stuff is being shown on TV. People are looking at it and saying, no, this is not close to being done. You people are crazy. This credibility gap is growing even further and further. And people are starting to say, look, this war is nowhere at an end. They're attacking major U.S. air bases. They are attacking major cities. They are the U.S. Embassy, for God's sake. And people are like, look, there's no way in the world you have an enemy on the ropes and then all of a sudden they throw all these major haymakers with an attack that large. And people are starting to say, look, there's no way this is coming to an end anytime soon. But it was a huge failure for the military of the VC. The VC did not accomplish much, but it did show the American public, hey, this is nowhere near being done. So people started to wake up, started to change their minds, and started to say, this is a lost cause. Let's get out. And here we see a very famous, iconic picture of the Tet Offensive. We have a Vietnamese general executing somebody in the Viet Cong. And as you see, the Viet Cong, just like a normal person, friend or foe again, people could not quite understand who their enemies were. And he executes them. This gets photographed by Eddie Adams, an American photographer. You see here, he's got a very famous quote: "The general killed the Viet Cong. I killed a general with my camera." Still, photographs are the most powerful weapon in the world. People believe in them, but photographs do not lie, even without manipulation. They are only half truths. What the photograph didn't say was, what would you do if you were the general at that time and place on that hot day? And you caught the so-called bad guy after he blew away one, two, or three American soldiers. How do you know you wouldn't have pulled the trigger yourself? And he has a point there because we don't know how we would react in that situation unless we were actually there. And this is going to lead us into 1968 when the boom goes dynamite. And all of a sudden, Johnson gets on TV. He is completely distraught. He just does not want to deal with the presidency anymore. He wants to get out. And he decides on national television to not run for re-election. His popularity was at an all-time low after the Tet Offensive, and 1968 was not a good year for the American public at all. The reason that it wasn't that great for the American public was because three other events. First event being MLK being assassinated by James Earl Ray. He was the leader of the civil rights movement. He was the figurehead. And he was the guy that everybody went to, everybody trusted, and now he's dead. And so the movement is pretty much at a parallel. Like, who do we go to now? And then the front runner, who would probably win the next election, is killed while he's running for president. And that's Robert Kennedy. That's JFK's younger brother. He's now dead. He's shot by Sirhan Sirhan in the middle of a public speech out of nowhere. People are like, what in the world is going on here? And then we have the riots in Chicago. People are going crazy there. They just cannot understand how bad things are in America, why they aren't getting any help. And a lot of black people are going to be caught in this clash of trying to get things better. They're trying to progress. And then at the same time, a lot of people are being very conservative and saying, no, we're going to imply those rules of the old South, even though it is happening in a northern city. And it doesn't help that the most amount of U.S. troops are actually going to be killed in 1968. And this was an astounding figure. People couldn't figure it out. They're just like, look, we are tired of this. We are trying to find something new. Let's get on board with a brand new mission going forward. Let's get away from what Johnson is doing. So Johnson pretty much quits because of those reasons. Now, he could not predict that Robert Kennedy would be killed or Martin Luther King Jr. 1968, by a lot of people, is considered a very key year in American history where things kind of tip over, go the other way, and make America change its course of direction. So, in the next video, we'll pick up with the war underneath our next president, which will be kind of like the Phoenix Rising, as it's called, Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon will be just as controversial as Johnson was. But, anyways, if you need any help, need anything else, get up with me. I'm here for you. Care for all of you. That's it for today.